The big Ron DeSantis trip to Washington was a big win for Donald Trump. The Florida governor was here yesterday looking to make friends for his likely 2024 presidential run. But 3 Florida House Republicans announced around that trip their endorsement of Trump. One gave her support to DeSantis. That brings Trump's endorsement count to 7 of Florida's 20 Republican House members. Just 1 is for Governor DeSantis so far. Some new CNN reporting today details the personal touches Trump uses to win these endorsements. They include a dinner coming up for Florida Republicans at Trump's Mar-a-Lago. One source telling CNN that if DeSantis wants endorsements, he, quote, should be picking up the phone and calling directly instead of having an aide doing the reach out, adding, quote, you know who calls for the Trump endorsement? Trump himself. CNN's Melanie Zanona is part of this new reporting and joins our conversation. This is interesting. Endorsements of House members are not going to be the determining factor in who wins the Republican nomination. This is one day in the life of the 2024 campaign, so we shouldn't overstate it. But when Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, it was making it up as you go along. This is proof that he has an organization that is strategically thinking and looking to embarrass Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, exactly right. Trump has made this a personal priority of his. He's specifically trying to get Florida Republicans to endorse him because his team really wants to build this narrative that even DeSantis' own constituents are backing Trump. And so he is having a dinner at Mar-a-Lago for some Florida members. He's been personally making calls. He's been really leaning into the loyalty angle in some of his pitches. And it is such a big contrast from Ron DeSantis, who's known as a bit of a loner. He's more aloof. He's more hands-off. In fact, just as one example, Tim Burchett, he's a Tennessee Republican. He said he's heard from Trump's team. He knows Trump. He's taken pictures with Trump. Trump has been friendly with his family, whereas he tried to get in contact with Ron DeSantis multiple times last year. And he said DeSantis' team blew him off. And in fact, he helped do a fundraiser for DeSantis in his own district, and then they left him off the list. So you're right, endorsements don't necessarily indicate performance in a race or whether they're going to succeed, but it does offer a very clear window into their operating styles.
And if you rewind the tape a couple months and you look at things said on television programs like this, if you look at things written in the smart, great newspapers by great political reporters, it was DeSantis had this team, right? That was going to distinguish him because he had experienced people who would help him to this crushing reelection win in Florida. Where's the evidence of that?
No, well, where's the evidence that Ron DeSantis has done anything particularly clever to seize this moment that he has or had, right? The fact that we're even using the past tense at this point about his window to come in as a hard-charging challenger to Trump is, I mean, Melanie's reporting, that's just like staggering political malpractice, right? My colleagues who write a Politico Playbook had some similar reporting about a member from Florida got a call from Donald Trump when he was in the ICU and never
Greg
heard
Steube,
from
right?
Yeah, for the entire time that he's been a member of Congress, he didn't hear from Ron DeSantis. You can sort of sit on the sidelines as a big popular governor with a big media profile and sort of wait for the moment that you want to get into the race if you're also doing a lot of stuff in private that Ron DeSantis doesn't seem to be doing.
Discipline is the word that I keep coming back to because I think sort of early in the speculative Trump-DeSantis standoff like discussions, it was like, well, DeSantis could be stronger than Trump because DeSantis is very disciplined and Trump is very undisciplined. And you're seeing actually a much more strategically disciplined early campaign on the Trump side. We're all watching what's going on with Disney. That engagement between Trump and DeSantis, or Trump going after DeSantis, is quite interesting. The idea of the policy versus the personality. What are the limits of the kind of anti-woke approach? And Trump is either just completely trolling DeSantis or is looking at polling and other evidence that tells him that DeSantis actually has over-torqued this and that he can get a strategic advantage. I think between that and the Bud Light, Don Jr. saying, let's bring Bud Light back into the fold. It's okay if they like transgender people. Like, these are interesting steps that I see as a piece of what's going on with the courtship of House Republicans.
And it's not just Donald Trump. If you have a good team, that helps you in presidential politics. And Trump, again, in 2016, it was sort of an open question. Remember contested convention? It was sort of make it up as you go along or bring new people in constantly. This is from a New York Times profile over the weekend of Susie Wiles, who is directing the Trump organization, and it quotes the infamous Roger Stone. She knows where the bodies are buried, says Roger Stone, a longtime Trump advisor who has known Ms. Wiles for more than 30 years. She has had a relationship with Ron DeSantis. It went south.
Yeah.
And so she is enjoying this moment. And again, Donald Trump embarrassed the governor. He had help from somebody who is more than willing to take down. She lives in Florida, too.
Yeah, and I go about 20 years back with Susie Wiles, and she does know where the bodies are buried, and she does not forget. And so when she fell out with Ron DeSantis and was edged out, that, she had a history with Trump as well, but I think that gives her extra fuel to really want to ding DeSantis. And like Margaret said, DeSantis seems to have overplayed his hand in a lot of ways, overplayed what his popular reelection really signals, and now overplayed a lot of his relationships or lack thereof, maybe underplayed those relationships is a better way to say it. But it does look, and he is in a tough spot because he's not a candidate. Like, how do you call up members of Congress and say, endorse me, when you're not a declared candidate? But a lot of the private things he could be doing, a lot of the relationship building to at least keep members of his delegation from endorsing anyone, that's what he's not doing.
The nomination will not be won here in Washington, but you can make friends here in Washington who help you. You win it in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, et cetera. South Carolina is where Governor DeSantis is today, and he says this.
Leadership, at the end of the day, is about doing what's right. When you have intense opposition and a lot of unfair criticism, but you're still willing to chart the proper course. You got to have the fortitude to stand alone if necessary, if that's what the circumstances called upon. People remember if you fought for them when it wasn't easy, because it's easy to stand for the right things when everyone's doing it.
Just a quick note, guy now understands television a little better than when I started. He needs to work on his staff getting some lighting. Look at the lighting in the room there. But that almost sounds like he's very aware of what he's going through right now. I'll stand alone. You got to deal with criticism. Is that the way to win votes?
Well, I think that part of the problem with that is that the argument that who is willing to take on the big fights when no one else will take them on, who is willing to take on the powers that be when other people are shrinking from the fight, that's a hard argument to make to distinguish yourself from Donald Trump in the eyes of Republican primary voters. That if you're Donald Trump, I hear that argument and think he's trying to play my song and he's not playing it as well as I do.
Yeah. You get the last word on. Okay, well, Trump got some of the endorsements. Did DeSantis do anything positive during the trip here?
I will say I've talked to some members who say once he does endorse, we are expecting more endorsements to come out. As Tia pointed out, he is not an official candidate, but he's going to have some work to do. Trump is trying to outmaneuver him. He's living for this moment, and he's trying to one-up the governor at every chance he can.